On top of being a big critical success for Netflix, the streaming platform's Shadow and Bone features a massive world full of magic, monsters, and lots of potentially confusing jargon. Most of that jargon has to do with the series' magic users, the Grisha.
Now the work begins.
Divided up into orders and specializations, there is plenty to keep track of as you journey through the first season. So if you're still scratching your head or you just want to get a feel for things before you start watching, stick around with us while we talk Grisha, their powers, amplifiers, and everything in between. The Grisha might be Shadow and Bone's answer to wizards, but they come with a twist. On the whole, the Grisha have a large number of powers, but each individual can only tap into one or two specific magical skills. They have these powers from birth, though they usually do not manifest their capacity for magic until later in childhood. And in Ravka, where most of Shadow and Bone's first season takes place, they're trained to use their powers to do incredible things. In the world of the series, this has led to plenty of problems, as tensions and mistrust flare between the Grisha and regular humans. While some Grisha are defied, everyday people are sometimes called the Abandoned due to their lack of powers and drastically shorter lifespans. In fact, the name Grisha itself plays into this idea of an artificial social hierarchy, and according to original series author Leigh Bardugo, she says, quote, "I chose the name Grisha for the magical elite because of the Russian diminutive of Gregory, which means watchful and derives from the biblical Grigory," end quote. But what exactly do the Grisha do, and how do they do it? According to them, it's less magic and more science. Using what's referred to as the small science, the Grisha are able to tap into the aspects of the physical world and manipulate them at the molecular level. This lets them shape and throw fire, turn still air into gale force winds. Change a person's appearance for a short time, and even slow or stop a rapidly beating heart. There is another form of Grisha ability as well, and it has a nasty cost attached to it called Merzost. It allows a very powerful Grisha to generate matter themselves or reshape it permanently. Incredibly powerful. This ability is as old as the Grisha themselves and takes a massive toll on the caster, sometimes requiring them to sacrifice or alter a part of their body. For all of these reasons, the practice is forbidden and has seemingly not even been used in hundreds of years, since a Grisha called the Dark Heretic summoned a magical storm called the Shadowfold and split Ravka in two. While Grisha abilities are innate, they also require plenty of training and practice to be controlled properly. In Ravka, this means being conscripted into the Second Army. While the nation once persecuted the Grisha, they have become a major part of how the country is run and fights its many border wars. By the command of the Shadow Summoner, General Kirigan, all Ravkan children are tested for Grisha abilities by forcing an emotional or pain response. While there are ways to cheat this test and stay hidden, most Grisha are found young and taken to the Ravkan capital of Alzalta, where they're sorted based on their abilities and submitted for training. Housed in a walled compound called the Little Palace, training is intense and physical, and often involves visits from the cold and ancient Bagra, a mysterious woman who has lived in Ravka for hundreds of years. But that's only what the Grisha are and what they do. To get a taste for their abilities, we need to look at the three orders of Grisha magic. First up are the Materialki, also called Fabricators. The Materialki are the most attuned to the physical world, using their abilities to manipulate hard matter and make objects. Like all Ravkan Grisha, they wear and are identified by a long tunic-like garment called a kefta that has different colored embroidery depending on the Grisha's specific power. Materialki wear purple keftas and are often broken up into alchemy and durists. The alchemy primarily deal in chemical compounds like poisons, gunpowder, or explosives. Their keftas are embroidered with red thread. The durists deal in more permanent things like creating glass, textiles, and hard Grisha steel. Their embroidery is gray. Next up are the Etherialki, sometimes referred to as the Order of Summoners. The Etherialki deal mostly in manipulating elemental forces like fire, air, and water. They wear blue keftas, and like the other orders, they're divided up even further into Squallers, Inferni, and Tidemakers. Masters of Weather, Squallers can change air pressure with a gesture and a thought, summoning storms or throwing powerful gusts of wind around. When a sand skiff makes the dangerous crossing through the Shadowfold, it's a Squaller who stands at the the helm and puts a constant stream of air into the sails. Their keftas are embroidered with silver. Unsurprisingly, the Inferni specialize in fire, able to make spheres of combustible gases and then ignite them. The Inferni are an invaluable part of Second Army units working on the front lines of Ravka's wars. Their keftas have red embroidery. The other main Etherialki specialization are the Tidemakers. With pale blue embroidery on their keftas, they create and manipulate water by altering the pressure and temperature of air around their hands. Finally, there are the Corporalki, dressed in red keftas. The Order of the Living and the Dead are some of the most valuable Grisha and have the power to manipulate and reshape the human body. Like other Grisha orders, they have several different types: Heartrenders, Healers, and Tailors. Heartrenders are a powerful force on the battlefield, gifted with the ability to touch and twist human organs. They wear keftas embroidered with black and can squeeze the air out of a man's lungs, cut off blood flow to different parts of the body, and slow or stop a beating heart with the flick of a wrist. On the other side of the Corporalki are the Healers. Just like it says on the tin, Healers are capable of easing pain, closing cuts, and knitting even the most grievous wounds back together if they act quickly enough. Like their Heartrender counterparts, they are a vital part of the Second Army's role. Their keftas are embroidered in gray. Finally, there are the Tailors. A good tailor doesn't patch clothes, but instead has the knack to change a person's appearance for a short time. Usually this means creating the illusion of makeup, hiding a scar, or de-aging someone a little, but it's a skill that can be expanded to completely changing someone's face to hide them, or create a convincing body double. The only prominent tailor in Shadow and Bone's first season is Genya, whose white and silver kefta denotes her role as a retainer to the royal family. Beyond these basic types of Grisha, there are a few notable exceptions, including one that we've already mentioned, General Kirigan. Also called the Black General or the Darkling, Kirigan's the leader of the Second Army, and apart from Bagra, is its sole shadow summoner. Himself hundreds of years old, Kirigan is technically considered Etherialki, but dresses in all black and has the ability to draw shadows to himself, focusing them and reshaping them into walls or flying blades of inky darkness. His abilities are said to be hereditary, and mark him as being directly tied to the Dark Heretic who created the Shadowfold. On the opposite side of the coin from Kirigan is Alina Starkov, Shadow and Bone's protagonist and the Sun Summoner, the only Grisha of her kind. The Sun Summoner is a legendary figure and the subject of decades of stories about a promised one who will destroy the Shadowfold and reunite Ravka. Able to draw in and spontaneously amplify light, Alina discovers her abilities as an adult during a disastrous crossing through the Shadowfold that nearly leaves her dead and puts her in the middle of a great conflict. Considered from all sides to be a saint, a fraud, and a valuable pawn, Alina is whisked off to the little palace for training and is also considered to be a type of Etherialki, though she wears several different types of kefta over the first season as she's manipulated by Kirigan and battles with her own perception of herself. Now that we know about the different types of Grisha, let's talk about some other things that they can do and how they can alter their abilities. In the world of Shadow and Bone, extremely powerful and noteworthy Grisha have been canonized and are revered as saints, one of whom is Ilya Morozova, one of the very earliest Grisha. Morozova is also called the Bonesmith and Sanct Ilya in chains. He was known for his obsession with creating ways to amplify the power of the Grisha and used his own finger bones in the creation of a number of creatures that serve as magical focal points. One of these, the Morozovan Stag, is the gigantic white stag that's hunted in Season 1 to amplify Alina's powers and link her to Kirigan. There are any number of other amplifiers in the world. Kirigan is one himself, and can increase a Grisha's powers by being near them, but linking a person with them requires a Corporalki to implant part of the object or creature directly into the Grisha's flesh. Finally, let's talk a little bit about how the Grisha are viewed in the rest of Shadow and Bone's world. While most of Season 1 takes place in Ravka, we still get a look at how other nations view the practitioners of the small science. In Shuhan to the south, Grisha seem to mostly be used as test subjects in cruel science experiments, while in the north, they're tried and killed as witches. Across the true sea to the west, things are even more of a mixed bag. In Kerch, most Grisha seem to be servants, while the southern colonies treat them as free peoples, and grimly enough, their blood is drunk as a cure-all in the Wandering Isle. And that's it. Now you've got everything you need to know about the Grisha, what they do, how they fit into the big fantastical world of Shadow and Bone, and how to make fireballs with only your brain. Thanks for hanging out with us here at Screen Rant. We'll see you next time.